I didn't marry just a man. I married his past. And his past came with two wounded hearts who didn't want me. When I first stepped into that house, I knew immediately I was not welcome. The children didn't look at me the way children look at someone they trust. Their eyes were guarded, distant, almost angry. They spoke to me sharply, ignored me when I asked questions, and sometimes laughed when I tried too hard. I smiled anyway, not because it didn't hurt, but because I understood. Their biological mother had left scars deeper than words. She ruled with fear, not love. Yelling, punishments, emotional coldness. These children had learned early that adults were not safe. So when I arrived, gentle and hopeful, they didn't see kindness. They saw danger. And they tested me every single day. They insulted me openly. They disrespected me quietly. They pushed every boundary to see when I would break. And sometimes, I almost did. There were nights I cried alone in the bathroom, staring at my reflection, asking myself why I was trying so hard for children who didn't want me. But then I remembered something important. They weren't bad children. They were scared children. So I chose patience over pride. I cooked their favorite meals even when they refused to eat. I helped with homework even when they mocked me. I attended school meetings even when they pretended I didn't exist. I became the mother they never asked for, but desperately needed. My husband noticed my exhaustion, but he never truly understood it. He thought time would fix everything. He didn't see how heavy love becomes when it's one-sided. 2 years. 2 long years of silence, rejection, and emotional bruises. But love has a strange power. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand credit. It works quietly, patiently, persistently. One evening changed everything. The younger child came home crying after a bad day at school. Without thinking, he ran straight into my arms. And then he froze.
So did I.
For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he held on tighter. That night I knew something had shifted. From that day on, small changes appeared. They stopped insulting me. They started listening. They began saying thank you. And one day they called me Mom. Not loudly, not confidently, but sincerely. My heart broke open in the most beautiful way. The home that once felt cold slowly filled with laughter. The children defended me when others spoke badly. They respected me the way they never respected anyone before. Even my husband finally understood. He looked at me one evening and said, "I never believed anyone could heal them. I was wrong." That's when he realized a truth many people ignore. When a woman decides to love, not for appreciation, not for applause, but for healing, she can rebuild an entire family. And we did. Together. Love doesn't arrive loudly in broken homes. It comes quietly, through small moments no one claps for. After the night the younger one ran into my arms, something invisible began to heal. The next morning I noticed it first at the breakfast table.
No insults.
No cold silence. They didn't smile, but they didn't look away either. It felt like standing on thin ice, afraid to move in case it cracked. So I acted normal. I poured milk, toasted bread, asked about school like I always did. And this time they answered. Short answers. Careful answers. But answers. That was the beginning. Days passed, then weeks. Their resistance softened, not suddenly, but steadily, like winter slowly surrendering to spring. They started waiting for me to come home before eating dinner. They asked me questions, real ones. They began telling me about their fears, their nightmares, the memories they didn't understand. That's when I realized how deeply damaged they were. Their first mother hadn't just left them afraid of her. She had left them afraid of love. They believed kindness was temporary. That care always came with conditions. That sooner or later, someone would hurt them again. So they watched me closely. Every mistake I made. Every moment I might snap. Every chance I could abandon them. But I didn't. When they were rude, I stayed calm. When they tested my limits, I held steady. When they insulted me, I corrected them gently instead of shouting. And slowly they stopped testing. One afternoon, the older one came home angry. He slammed his bag down and shouted at me over something small. The old fear flashed in his eyes, waiting for punishment. I didn't yell. I sat beside him and said, "You can be angry, but you're still safe here."
He broke down.
Not loudly, not dramatically. Quiet tears. The kind children cry when they've held pain for too long. That was the day he told me everything. The shouting, the fear, the nights he wished someone would protect them. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't compare. I didn't judge. I just listened. From that moment on, I wasn't just someone living in their house. I was home. My husband noticed the change before he understood it. The children laughed more. They argued less. They looked lighter. One evening, he watched from the doorway as the kids helped me in the kitchen, something unthinkable before. "Why do they listen to you?" he asked quietly. I smiled and said, "Because I never made them afraid." That answer stayed with him. He began to see what he had overlooked, the emotional labor, the silent sacrifices, the patience that doesn't show on the surface. For the first time, he apologized. Not just with words, but with effort. He supported me openly, corrected the children when they crossed lines, stood beside me instead of staying neutral. That changed everything. The house transformed. Family dinners became warm instead of tense. Birthdays felt joyful instead of forced. Laughter replaced walking on eggshells. One night, as I tucked them into bed, the younger one held my hand and said, "You don't scare us." I swallowed hard and replied, "I never want to." He smiled and whispered, "We know." That was when I understood something powerful. Love doesn't need blood to be real. Motherhood doesn't need biology to be true. It needs consistency,
Safety.
and a heart willing to stay. We weren't perfect, but we were healing. And for the first time, we were becoming a real family. Love doesn't ask for permission. One day, it simply becomes undeniable. By the time the third year began, our home felt different. Not perfect, but warm. The kind of warmth that comes from safety, not silence. The children no longer walked past me like I was invisible. They argued with me sometimes, real arguments, not cruel ones. And strangely, that felt like progress. Because children only fight with people they trust. The older one started waiting for me after school. Not every day, but often enough to matter. He'd sit quietly in the living room, pretending to be busy on his phone, but I knew he was waiting to talk. The younger one followed me everywhere.
Kitchen. Garden.
Even to the laundry room. "You're always busy," he complained once. I laughed. "That's what moms do." He stopped walking. Then very softly he said, "You are a mom." Not my mom. Not yet. But close enough to make my chest ache. The real moment came unexpectedly, on a day I thought would break me. It was Parents' Day at school. I didn't plan to go. I stood in front of the mirror that morning, adjusting my scarf, wondering if I even had the right to be there. Would they be embarrassed? Would they ask me to stay back? My husband noticed my hesitation.
"Go," he said gently.
"They need you." So I went. The school hall was filled with parents, mothers holding flowers, fathers taking photos. I sat quietly at the back, prepared to disappear if needed. Then I heard my name. Not loudly, but clearly. "Mom." I turned. Both children were standing there, smiling nervously. They didn't look at the teacher. They didn't look at their father. They looked at me. "Come sit here," the older one said. In that moment, something inside me finally healed. Not because they chose me publicly, but because they chose me willingly. During the presentation, the teacher spoke about emotional growth, support systems, and stable homes. She smiled at me and said, "Your children are very lucky. Your children." I held back tears. After school, while we walked home, the younger one slipped his hand into mine like it had always belonged there. That night, the older one knocked on my door. "I know you're not our real mom," he said, avoiding my eyes. "But can we call you that?" I didn't answer immediately. Because love deserves honesty. "You already do," I replied. He smiled. From that day on, the house felt alive. They defended me when relatives questioned my place. They corrected anyone who disrespected me. They celebrated me on Mother's Day, handmade cards, awkward hugs, sincere words. Even my husband changed. He became more attentive, more grateful, more present. One evening, while the kids laughed in the next room, he looked at me and said, "I didn't know love could fix what fear destroyed." I answered softly, "It can if it stays." And I stayed. I stayed through tantrums, through teenage moods, through mistakes and forgiveness. Because family isn't created by perfection. It's created by persistence, by choosing each other again and again. And in the quiet moments, when the house settles and the laughter fades, I sometimes remember the woman I used to be. Tired, unseen, questioning her worth. She would never believe this life. A life where love finally came back to her.
Not all at once,
but forever. Some families are born. Others are chosen. Years passed, not in dramatic leaps, but in ordinary days filled with quiet miracles. Morning routines became laughter instead of tension. School lunches turned into inside jokes. Even disagreements ended with apologies instead of fear. Our home no longer carried the echo of old wounds. It carried trust. The children grew, not just taller, but gentler. They learned how to express anger without cruelty, sadness without shame. They learned that love doesn't disappear when voices rise or mistakes happen. One evening, the older one came home with a broken heart, his first. He didn't lock himself in his room or hide his pain. He came to me, and as I held him while he cried, I realized something powerful. I was no longer filling a gap. I was home. The younger one wrote an essay at school titled "The Woman Who Saved Our Family." When the teacher shared it with me, my hands shook as I read his words. He didn't talk about biology. He talked about safety, patience, presence. He called me mom without hesitation. My husband changed in ways even he didn't expect. He became softer, more involved, more aware of emotional wounds. He apologized for the years he took my strength for granted. One night, as we sat together after the children slept, he said, "I didn't just marry a woman. I married a healer." I smiled, but corrected him gently. "No," I said. "I just loved without fear." That love shaped everything. We celebrated holidays as a family, not pretending, not performing, but truly together. We created traditions. Movie nights, Sunday breakfasts, long talks that stretched past midnight. And when people asked me how I did it, how I endured the rejection, the insults, the exhaustion, I gave them the only honest answer. I didn't endure. I believed. I believed wounded children could heal. I believed love could outlast fear. I believed a woman's patience, when paired with self-respect, is a quiet force that changes lives. I never erased their past. I honored it by giving them a future where pain no longer controlled them. And in doing so, I found my own healing. Because sometimes, when a woman chooses love, real love, not the kind that hurts, she doesn't just build a family. She rebuilds herself. Our home stands today not because we are perfect, but because we chose each other. Every day,